Another traffic stop leads to the death of another unarmed black man in America.
That Corbin and Corbin legal team fighting for the rights of the people. That father-daughter team investing in the youth when the system ain't treating them equal. Providing truth for our people, we able to reach them. So anytime you get accused for a crime and Lord knows you ain't do it, we here to get you through it. Exemplifying prudence and glorifying God, making sure you're compensated for other people's doings. Our vision is to be one of the best. We're small enough to focus on your matter throughout the neighborhoods of Dallas. Working constantly and making sure your rights are protected. A firm team of lawyers, aggressive, effective. A team that has your back in the courtroom. Two well-spoken black lawyers in the courtroom. Investing time and resources when it's evident that you were treated wrong. Now you walking out of Dallas courtroom with a settlement. Corbin and Corbett, the father-daughter legal tag team that has your back in the courtroom. Our purpose is simple. To obtain the favorable outcome for each client and glorify Christ in all we do. Our vision is to be one of the best and most...
Hello, Rebels. This is attorney Chloe Corbett, aka the Duchess of Justice, and with me I have
Attorney Augustus Corbett, aka the Minister of Justice.
we are the Defiant Lawyers. We provide legal analysis of trending politics, policies, personalities, and pop culture to empower you to defy this unjust legal system. Before we get into today's topic, why don't you go ahead and like this video, hit that subscribe button, and share it with your family and friends so that they too can get legal news from the Black perspective. With that, Dad, what's up and happy Saturday?
Oh, so much is going on, Chloe. But yes, happy Saturday to you as well. I am once again just heartbroken at what has happened out in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I'm looking forward to us having that discussion.
I am too. This police shooting has taken the world by storm yet again. It really brings me back to the mindset I was in with the George Floyd shooting and watching the trial and all of those proceedings. But today, Rebels, we're going to be discussing and analyzing the police shooting of Patrick Lyoya. Patrick was a 26-year-old black man who was stopped by a Grand Rapids police officer, and it ended with him losing his life yet again at the hands of a law enforcement officer in this country. And this incident took place on April 4th. And as I've been researching and learning about it and looking at all of the reaction, that one thing that just continued to just circulate in my mind is that April 4th is Caleb's birthday, who's my brother, who is a 28-year-old black man in America. And the fact that Patrick, lost his life on the same day that we were celebrating the life of my brother, another black man, it just puts into perspective how fragile life can be for black men in America, and how our law enforcement procedures and policies needs to change. Isn't that just striking that, the same day that Patrick lost his life is the same day that Caleb was born and we were celebrating his life?
Yes, it certainly is. And as a parent of a young black man, I am obviously always in prayer for him, and so that he doesn't suffer that same outcome. And I hadn't really made that connection. And just as you were bringing that up, I mean, that really brings it home. I did see those parents on TV talking about their son, and I tell you, I couldn't hold back the tears. Not only is your son gone, but his demise, his death, is actually on television. I mean, on videotape for the world to continue to keep playing and playing. And unfortunately, we're going to play it as well. And might I warn you all, there are parts of this video that we're going to see in a few moments that is very, that are very graphic, raw. And if you don't want to see it, you're going to have to you need to turn your head because it doesn't blur out anything. You see the actual killing of this young man.
You do. And this video footage that we're about to play was released by the Grand Rapids Police Department. They released um, surveillance camera, dash camera, and video from a bystander who took video on his cell phone. So we're going to play two of those clips today. We're going to play the body cam, and we're also going to play the cell phone video footage.
It
So, like my dad
it
said, this is
Chloe, it'll take me a minute to get this set up. So um, just go ahead and continue talking. Give me an opportunity to set it up.
okay. So, like my dad said, this footage is very graphic. It shows what took place, and just to give everyone a background on what happened, the shooting happened on Monday, April 4th. It happened just after 8 a.m. at an intersection in Grand Rapids of Gregg Street and Nelson Avenue. Authorities said that a GRPD officer initiated a traffic stop um, with a vehicle who allegedly had a faulty license plate. So they're alleging that Patrick was driving a vehicle. I believe it was an Altima. I could be wrong. And the allegation is that he had a faulty license plate, or it was a mismatched license plate on that vehicle that he was driving. So this unidentified, might I add, officer, they haven't released his information, anything about him. They've only said that he is on paid administrative leave and he's not doing any police activities. But this unidentified officer initiated this traffic stop. Okay. And what a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of citizens come into contact with law enforcement via traffic stops. And what has been illuminated these past few years is that for Black people, a lot of times these unassuming traffic stops often lead to us being seriously injured or dead. And so the same thing unfortunately happened with Patrick. There was He was stopped. Allegedly, the officer asked him about the faulty license plate tags.
Well, I
Patrick got
I have the video set up now. If you want to go on and start it.
okay. Let's go ahead and show you. Is there sound on this video?
Yes, I can hear the sound. You can't hear it.
I can't hear the sound.
Well, I don't know what's going on with the sound, but just look at the visual. So they're scuffling, they're fighting. I think that's okay. I think that's enough of that, Chloe. So, um, all right, go ahead.
So as you all saw, I don't know if you want to go through the video and break it down in pieces or just have a general discussion about it, Dad. What do you prefer?
Just a general discussion because they got so much security on this video. It's hard to really manipulate it. So
Okay.
yeah, I usually can chop it up, but they got it really restricted.
Okay. So as you all saw, this was it looked like a routine traffic stop. According to the GRPD, the Grand Rapids Police Department, there may have been an alleged faulty license plate or mismatched license plate.
Alleged, like
Um,
you said. Make sure that
alleged,
yeah, that
yeah,
has not been
hasn't
proven.
been proven.
Yep.
And I just got a new car. My old car had an outdated registration that I got taken care of. These are things that happen. These are routine things that happen that should not lead to the death of a person, a young black man. So there was some type of communication about that. We see Patrick get out of the vehicle. We couldn't hear what he said, but I have seen that video before. And Patrick, he did not get just absolutely rowdy with the police officer. He didn't start cursing the police officer out. He was attempting to have a conversation with the police officer. I think at one point, you see Patrick go to the other side of the vehicle, and it was reported that he had someone else in the vehicle with him,
Yeah.
and
You
he
could hear
started communicating.
the other person.
You could hear the other person.
Yes.
So, what are some of the things that the passenger was saying? That
Well, you couldn't hear him very well, but you could tell that there was somebody else in the car. In fact, Patrick asked, it sounded like he asked, and by the way, Patrick is from the Congo. He moved here some years ago, and he had a very heavy accent. So there may have been some communication issues between him and the police officer as well. But he affirmed to the officer that he had a driver's license, and then it sounded like he asked the passenger to get the driver's license for him. Um, and so they were talking back and forth, and at that point, I guess Patrick, made the decision to walk away or to run or whatever he did. We can't see everything, and so I'm reluctant to say too much just based on this video. Chloe, you and I know that you know videos capture a lot and they're very helpful, but sometimes they don't get everything. There are different angles that you need to see, so many nuances and things you can't hear, and so on. And those details, those minute by minute details, become very critical in cases like this.
they do. And I think the point that we stopped at makes a larger point that I want to bring out, which is the police officer could have made a different decision. The police officer could have issued a citation and put it on the vehicle. The police officer could have gone back to the precinct, at least here in Texas, and issued a citation at large, meaning that he didn't physically give the citation to the person, but there's a citation that was issued. The police officer could have waited for backup and let Patrick continue to walk and continued an investigation if he felt he needed to do so. But he did not have to chase after Patrick at that moment. That fight did not have to begin. As we said before, this was a mere traffic stop. It was a traffic stop for an alleged license plate violation. And so if he, made that allegation and thought that the license plate was faulty, he could have just given a citation and they both could have been along their merry way. And we see in the video, Patrick steps out of the vehicle. Um, there's no visible weapons on Patrick on his body. If the officer, felt he wanted to try to search the vehicle, maybe he could have done that. But there was just so many different things that the officer could have done that would not have resulted in Patrick losing his life. I think that's the major thing that this first part of the video shows. What are your thoughts, Dad?
I agree completely. You know, a lot of people are going to go to the fact that Patrick started walking away, kind of trotting. You know, kind of reminds me of Walter Scott in South Carolina, who got into a really slow jog. Um, but you know, people who are just sort of biased toward the blue, that's what they're going to hop on. They're going to say he ran away. They're going to say he was fighting with the police officer, and they're going to use those two things to justify the killing of this young man. And I just want to slam my fist on this table right now and say that that is completely, totally, absolutely wrong. Um, Chloe, you and I know that here in Texas, for example, if that officer had not shot Patrick, Patrick may have been charged with evading arrest. And if so, it would be a misdemeanor. And Patrick potentially could have been charged with assault for fighting. And if so, that could have been a felony, could have been reduced. Point is, neither or none of the charges that Patrick could have been facing would have amounted to the death penalty. That's the point. That is the point that I want to make more than anything today. These police encounters with black men in particular often ends in death for, as you said, Chloe, minor traffic violations or tickets or suspicion. And it's just wrong. It's wrong. And you made an excellent point. And that is, he could have just let the man go. To me, that was the fault. That was the biggest fault of this officer. If he suspected that this was a stolen car, which has not been proven, but if he thought that, you have the car sitting right here. You could impound the car, find out what's going on with the car, and get Patrick later. And Patrick would be living, and this officer's life would not be changed forever. Now, if Patrick was white, and that's what we got to get into today. If Patrick was white, chances are the officer would have been a lot judicious, a lot deliberate, a lot more thoughtful, and would have showed a great deal more humanity. Why? Because sadly, many of these officers out here just simply don't value black life. Period. Not just officers, a lot of people, period, don't value black life. So again, flip the script, make this guy white, and you would have seen that officer do all kinds of things to avoid shooting that man, because he would have known that if I shoot this white man, I am going to be seriously scrutinized and judged, because white lives matter. If I shoot this black man, especially now that he is running and struggling, there is a good chance that I'll get away with this.
And the Supreme Court has kind of aided police officers in getting away with these type of shootings.
That's right.
So there's two premier cases that apply to Patrick's untimely death. The first is Tennessee v. Garner, which came out in 1985. Very similar facts. A black man was suspected of, in this case, a felony, a robbery, I believe, and he began to flee, and he was subsequently killed in that police chase. The case went all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said that you cannot use deadly force against a fleeing suspect. That's the general rule. Then they added an exception that says unless that suspect will put someone or themselves in substantial risk of injury. But the default line that came out of that case is that law enforcement cannot use deadly force against a fleeing suspect.
An unarmed fleeing suspect.
Yeah, unarmed fleeing suspect. Unarmed. Yep. Just like Patrick was, according to the facts that have come out, Patrick was unarmed. And then there was a subsequent case. Um, the help me out, Dad.
Graham v. Connor.
Yes, Graham v. Connor. They came out a few years after Tennessee v. Garner, which basically it said that a officer involved shooting basically has to come from the viewpoint of the officer, and there's a number of factors, and the case has to be analyzed. The use of deadly force has to be analyzed from a reasonable standard. So would it be reasonable for that officer to feel like he or she needed to use deadly force? And it was that case that has allowed a lot of these police shootings not to be for charges not to be brought against the officers in these police shootings. And so that's what the prosecutor, the ADA, in this county is going to be looking at. That's what the investigation by the state, what they're going to be looking at as well, as to whether or not they're going to bring charges against this officer who shot and killed Patrick.
That's right. Now, I want to go back to Tennessee v. Garner a little bit here. We did a video. Well, actually, I did a video on this a few years ago. I think it was right around the Walter Scott shooting, murder. So please go to our YouTube channel and you can listen to that video. But as Chloe said, that Tennessee case just basically provided a bright line rule. If a person is unarmed and is fleeing, and the case says, and is providing no substantial risk of serious bodily injury or death to the officer or to a citizen, then they cannot shoot him. They cannot shoot him point blank. So again, if a person is committing a felony, but they're unarmed and they're not a substantial risk of harm to the officer or to another individual, then you cannot shoot him. In the Tennessee case, like Patrick, rest in peace, I think that police officer in the Tennessee case shot that guy, black guy, at that in the back of the head, just like this case. And Chloe, with the Graham case, Graham v. Connor, you're right. The court came back and basically said, I think the court realized or got pressure from law enforcement or somebody, and I think that just said, hey, we need to qualify this a little bit. So they came back and said, hey, we're not going to overturn the Tennessee case, but at the same time, we do need to qualify it because police officers are out here doing a dangerous job. Police officers are making split-second decisions that are easy for us to sit back in our chairs and second guess, but when they're in the heat of the moment, and making those split-second decisions, you got to look at it, as Chloe said, from the officer's perspective, from his subjective perspective, and a lot of police shootings have been basically thrown under the rug because of the Graham case.
Yep.
So basically, the U.S. Supreme Court needs to go back now and say some more, because these cases are 40 years old, and things are different now. The videotapes, and we're now seeing these shootings have been going on for a long time, but we're now seeing them. I mean, we're literally seeing them, sometimes in real time, like Philando Castile. They're actually putting them on Facebook, and it's happening as it's happening. We're seeing it as it happened. So I think the court needs to come back now and say, and qualify this some. If you would, Chloe, tell us a little bit about qualified immunity, because that's another part that plays into these cases, and how police officers, oftentimes vindicated when they shoot folks.
Yeah, so qualified immunity is it's a doctrine that really stops. It really makes police officers immune from having to give settlements out to injured to a person who was killed or injured because of the police officer used excessive or deadly force. It's a doctrine that stops that family from recovering for damages on their loved one's behalf. So a lot of these claims, when a person is shot and killed by the police or suffers some type of injury from the police, they can bring a 1983 civil rights action lawsuit against the police officer, the city who hired the police officer, any government agency that hired the police officer, and said that the person who was killed or injured, their rights were violated. They can bring a lawsuit in federal court and civil court and try to recover damages on behalf of themselves, or the family can try to do so. But where qualified immunity steps in is it stops those civil lawsuits in their tracks, and says that officers cannot be held responsible. They're immune from the civil lawsuit continuing to proceed. And in my opinion, that has given officers a lot of leeway in using excessive force or deadly force, and maybe not de-escalating situations like they need to. And so there's various bills that are just sitting in Congress now, like the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, that would eliminate qualified immunity and would allow these civil actions to continue through. And I think that is important because it may make officers pause when they're making these split second decisions. It may make officers pause to say, you know what, instead of reaching for my gun, I'm going to de-escalate this. I'm going to try to continue to use my taser. If this person is unarmed and not dangerous, I'm going to let them go and get back up. Just other decisions that could be made in that situation. So we really need qualified immunity gone, in my opinion. I think that would help, stop these officer involved shootings, the frequency that they're happening.
Okay, we got some comments coming here. Arlene Harrell says police reform doesn't help these racehorses, race soldiers, or whatever you want to call them. I am totally tired of them killing our black men.
Yeah.
So we obviously agree with you. Ms. Harrell, thank you for that comment. Let's lean into qualified immunity a little more. Chloe, thank you for laying it out the way you did. Let's lean into the political side of it. What's the old saying? Elections have consequences.
Yep.
In order to, are you hearing me okay? I see you keep having to push in your earpiece.
I'm hearing you good. My earpiece keeps falling out.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
probably, my ears are shaped a little weird, so disregard that, guys. But I hear everything good.
Okay. These things, they do that. Mine just happened to be, I got big ears. So, but elections have consequences. So
Yeah.
this coming November, which is what? May, June, July, August, September, October, November, 7 months. 7 months from now, we're going to have midterm elections. And there are senators and there are House of Representative members who are either against the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act or for it. And so what happens in that, now mine is coming out, Chloe, since I mentioned yours.
I jinxed it.
But so both sides of the Congress House and Senate are really, really close. You got what, a 50-50 split in the Senate. So you lose a couple of, I think Senator Warnock is one Democrat who's up for reelection. You lose him, forget George Floyd, Justice and Policing Act. Forget it. Forget him. And there are others, okay? There are also, I think, some Republicans who are up for a reelection. The point I'm making is if folks don't get out to vote who want to see police reform, if folks don't get out to vote in November and get the right people in office who would vote yes for police reform, would vote yes for the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, qualified immunity is going to stay around. It's going to be here. And police officers, as you explained very well, will say to themselves in these moments, if I kill this person, oftentimes a black person, nothing's going to happen to me. I'm probably not going to be prosecuted. If they file a lawsuit, the judge is probably going to throw it out because of qualified immunity. I'm probably not going to be indicted. And the union, the police union, will pay my legal bills. I'll be put on desk duty, which is great. It's like a paid vacation. And so nothing really happens to me. In fact, I may get a promotion. Okay? So with, people who are not lawyers and don't have a legal background, they don't understand what's going on behind the scenes. So we're trying to inform you all that the United States Supreme Court, which again, let's talk politics a minute, right now is 6-3. 6 people are very conservative who would not be in favor of abolishing or changing qualified immunity. All that the result of Donald Trump getting elected, who put on the court 3 very conservative folks, and those 3 folks are extremely supportive of police officers, even when police officers do wrong. So again, elections have consequences. You can't stay home. You got to go out and vote. You got to vote. You got to vote. You got to vote. You got to vote. Because if not, people will get in these positions who will continue to allow what we see, like with the young man, Patrick, how do you pronounce his name? Yoyola?
I think it's Lyoya.
Loyola. I think it's Loyola. Lyoya.
Lyoya. Lyoya.
Yeah. Sorry about that, you all. We're going to continue to see these things because the change needs to start at the top with the United States Supreme Court and with the United States Congress.
Yeah. Dad, I think at this point we should play the cell phone footage because it's very graphic, you all. Very graphic. There's nothing blurred out.
All right,
It
let me
is
let me
very
get it.
hard to look at.
Let me get it set
Okay.
up. So go ahead and just talk a moment while I set it up.
But I think seeing this will highlight what we're saying and why changes are needed and why qualified immunity needs to be abolished. While my dad is setting that up, I want to read something that the Supreme Court in a case, Pearson v. Callahan, has said about qualified immunity. Quote, qualified immunity balances 2 important interests. This is from the U.S. Supreme Court. The need to hold public officials accountable when they exercise power irresponsibly, and the need to shield officials from harassment, distraction, and liability when they perform their duties reasonably. Now, look, the Supreme Court has said that qualified immunity balances 2 important interests. I would say that it doesn't balance these interests, it holds one above the other. And I believe qualified immunity holds the interest of the need to shield officials from quote unquote harassment, distraction, and liability has been outweighed by the need to hold these officials accountable when they exercise their power irresponsibly. So I disagree with the way that the Supreme Court has defined qualified immunity. I don't believe it balances those two issues. I believe it puts the need to shield officials higher than the need to hold them accountable. So that's why my dad was saying these elections matter. That's why we were saying your vote matters, because we need people in Congress who understand that the way that qualified immunity is used to help continue to kill members of the black community is so important, guys. And what it does as well is it stops the lawsuit in its tracks. Okay. So when Patrick's family, for example, and I hope this doesn't happen, but when Patrick's family, if they decide to file a 1983 Civil Rights Act lawsuit against this police officer in the city, etc., and this police officer then is likely could come back and say, "Hey, I'm asserting qualified immunity. I am immune from this lawsuit proceeding the trial altogether." So it stops the lawsuit in its tracks, and it stops this person's family from being able to seek justice on behalf of their family. So it's important.
Okay,
The
very
video
good.
ready, Dad?
Yeah, I think it's
Okay.
ready now. So let's see. Let me say one. Let me say again. Let me stress again, as you just did, Chloe. This is very, very raw footage. There are no blurred parts of it. You actually see this officer. You actually see the smoke coming from the gun. If you don't want to see that, please go ahead and um, just turn away before this happens, okay? Before we run this. So I wanted to just let you know, all right? Okay, so let's go over and see this video. Is there any sound?
There's no sound on my end.
Okay. All right, you just saw the killing of Patrick Lyoya. You just saw it. That was raw and graphic. For that 52 seconds, I'll tell you what was said. The officer said, "Let go of the taser." And the person who was recording, using his cell phone to record that, said he ain't got no taser. And then the officer says, "Stop resisting," I think. And you see him then pull his revolver and shoots Patrick in the back of the head. So let me comment on it, on what I just saw in light of the two cases that we discussed earlier. As Chloe said, it is very important. As a matter of fact, I'm a little teary eyed. Let's just pause for 3 seconds or so here, and respect Patrick's memory and his family. Thank you all very much for that. Okay, you can probably hear my voice. And Chloe, especially when you brought up, reminded me that this occurred on my son, your brother's birthday. Okay. So Tennessee v. Garner. Again, that U.S. Supreme Court case, as Chloe said, when the district attorney and the assistant district attorneys and probably the police chief and, the prosecutors and all those people are sitting around the table and deciding, is this justified? They're going to make that determination based on Tennessee v. Garner, that United States Supreme Court case. And again, the standard is no. A police officer cannot shoot an unarmed, fleeing felon unless the officer has reasonable belief that the person is likely to cause substantial bodily injury or death to the officer or to a member of the public. So just apply the facts, apply what you saw to that standard, and you would see that Tennessee v. Garner would not justify that shooting. For these reasons, Patrick was running away from the officer. Number one, there's no evidence whatsoever that he was armed. In fact, they have not come out and said that he was armed. So we can assume that he was not armed. If he was armed, they would have said it by now. So we can assume safely that he was not armed. So he was fleeing. And so, okay, we don't know if he was driving a stolen car. The officer walked up and said the tag doesn't match the car. But you know what? Let's say he had stole the car. I don't want to tarnish his memory, but I want to prove my case about the Tennessee v. Garner case. Let's say he had. So that under Michigan law, I presume, would be a felony. So he would be classified as a fleeing felon. Now, there's no proof that the car was stolen. This is just for argument's sake. So he would be, the grand jury would say, okay, he was committing a felony. He was fleeing. Yeah, but he wasn't armed. So therefore, he was no more threat to anybody, including the officer. In fact, he wasn't any threat to the officer because he was running away from the officer. The officer could have just let him go, which he should have done. Okay? And so, but the officer catches up with them. And because the officer catches up with them, I think at that point, now the Graham v. Connor case comes into play. And that case says, okay, he didn't let him go for whatever reason. He ran behind him. So now the grand jury is going to be looking at, and not even the grand jury, the prosecutor, because the prosecutor can say, we're not even going to present this to a grand jury. So the prosecutor is going to be sitting there saying, okay, well, the officer's making split-second decisions. What is the officer thinking? Does the officer feel like his life is in imminent danger because the officer, I'm sure, told the prosecutor, will tell the prosecutor, that he was reaching for my taser? Although that was disputed by the guy doing the video. So there are all sorts of reasons here that Graham v. Connor case could be used to say, okay, the officer acted lawfully. I don't know. what they may do. We just know in 99% of these cases, officers are not held accountable. Okay? That's kind of the way I parse it, Chloe. How do you see it?
Me too. And I think it comes down to as well, Dad. I want to read specifically what the Supreme Court said in Graham v. Connor too.
Okay.
It said the Fourth Amendment, which we know protects against unreasonable search and seizures. The Fourth Amendment's reasonableness inquiry is whether the officer's actions are, quote, objectively reasonable in light of the facts and circumstances confronting them without regard to their underlying intent or motivation. The reasonableness of a particular use of force must be judged from the perspective of a reasonable officer on the scene, and its calculus must embody an allowance for the fact that police officers are often forced to make split second, that's what you keep referring to, decisions about the amount of force necessary in a particular situation. I think that last line really goes to the clip that we just saw. Well, not the clip, what happened, Patrick losing his life. So the officer is often forced to make split second decisions about the amount of force necessary in a particular situation. I don't think in that situation, pulling out his handgun, shooting Patrick in the back of the head when he's on top of Patrick is reasonable. I think that that amount of force was extremely unreasonable. I think that using deadly force in that case was unnecessary. I think that in that analysis, what I just read, what the Supreme Court said, this is using the Supreme Court's own language, that police officers are often forced to make split second decisions about the amount of force necessary in a particular situation. I think in that split second, it was unreasonable and unnecessary for the officer to reach, pull out his handgun, and shoot Patrick in the back of his head. So I believe in that split second, so many different things could have been done by that police officer. One, I don't even think that the police officer should have been on top of Patrick. I think he should have let him go, like you were saying, Dad. But let's say, he's in this situation now. He could have continued to try to use his taser. He could have, used some other type of force to try to get Patrick to put his hands behind his back. He did not, in my opinion, it was not reasonable or necessary for him to pull his handgun out and then shoot him in the back of his head.
Let me say this too. I am a firearm owner. I own quite a few, and let me comment on the duty holster that a lot of these officers use. And they tend to come from two places. Most officers buy their duty holsters from a company called Safariland. And Safariland is a very popular holster duty holster. We call them duty holsters because they're typically used on duty. Law enforcement uses them on duty or military folks. Whereas the everyday carry holster is made different just for, regular folks. Well, the duty holster, and I'm bringing this up because the fear the officer may have had or will likely say in his statement is that he was afraid that Patrick could get his weapon. He's afraid that Patrick could get his sidearm and then shoot him. That's the fear. Okay? And so although Patrick wasn't armed, the officer and those who are back to blue at all costs, that's what they're going to say. But here's a little unknown fact by most people. Those duty holsters lock those pistols in. They're locked in. My duty holster um, it takes one, two snaps. I have to release it. I have to when I go in to get my pistol, I have to do a couple of things simultaneously and quickly to be able to draw my pistol quickly. A person who does not know how to do that will have a hard time getting that person's pistol, getting that officer's pistol. You got to be familiar with the Safariland system. They have a 3-point security system that keeps the pistol in that holster. Okay? And they're there because, sometimes police officers, they get in struggles. They have to run and they want their pistols to be secure. So that Safariland pistol, which most of them use, is a very, very secure system. So it is a stretch to say that Patrick or anyone could just very easily get that pistol out, unless they, like me, know that system, that Safariland system. Now I would know how to do it. I mean, when you see me out on the range practicing, I'm split second drawing my pistol and doing some, target practicing, and it looks like I'm just reaching in and grabbing my pistol and bringing it out. I'm not. I'm having to do a couple things to unlock my pistol to pull it out, and that officer has to do the same thing, and that's why those security systems are in place. So it is not true that Patrick could have very easily gotten his pistol and shot him. I just want to throw that in.
That's so good. I think you should do a demonstration on that, Dad, to show our listeners and our watchers, our viewers, exactly what you're talking about with that duty holster and the things that you have to do to get the firearm out of the holster. Um, and if you don't know what you're doing, how difficult it can be.
You know what?
I myself would love to see it.
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna grab my duty holster and do it. I think that's a great idea. Okay, can you just hold the audience while I do it, while I grab those things?
Yes,
Okay, all right, hold
I
on.
can.
All right, I'm turning it over to you.
Okay. That was such a good point, guys. What my dad brought up about the type of holsters that police officers use to secure their firearms and their weapons, and how if you're not familiar with the mechanics of the holster, how it really could be difficult to get the firearm out of the police out of the holster that is around the waist of the police officer, because just like he said, you don't want the police officer running for the firearm to get loose and be able to come out, for someone to just be able to slip it out and then get access to it. So that is such a good point, and I'm excited to see my dad demonstrate exactly how the duty holster should be used. um but going back to this analysis, again, guys, this is Graham v. Connor. This is the preeminent case that has allowed a lot of these police shootings, um, for the police officers not to be held accountable. Graham v. Connor. And I want to read this to you all again. So let's start from the top. This is a Fourth Amendment analysis or inquiry. The Fourth Amendment in part says that we are protected from the government doing unreasonable searches and seizures upon us. And the Supreme Court has said that, you know, being arrested, being detained, that is a seizure. And again, the inquiry that the police officers' actions are held to is that their actions must be objectively reasonable, and that the use of force must be judged from the perspective of a reasonable officer on the scene. And its calculus must embody an allowance for the fact that police officers are often forced to make split-second decisions. So that duty holster that my dad was just talking about, it goes into this split-second decision because the officer knows what type of holster that they have and the mechanics of what is needed to get their firearm loose. So I see my dad is back here. You ready to demonstrate that for us?
Yes, I am. And happy that Sean Breezy joined us. Mr. Breezy
So,
said, just purchased my first firearm, but my wife doesn't want me to carry it because of the police. I'm going to come back to that. Oh boy, this is such a rich conversation. This is
yeah.
such a rich conversation, Brother Breezy. And I got comments about that. Let me do this demonstration. Chloe, that was a great idea. Okay. So it's going to be kind of cumbersome because my duty belt is heavy and so on, but I'm going to do the best I can. Okay. Let me go to another screen. Okay. So first of all, here is my handgun. Okay. All right.
Okay
This
then.
is, can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
And it's clear. There's nothing in here. There are no bullets in the chamber, and there's nothing in the mag well. All right. Let me see here. What's going on? Let me make sure I'm on the right camera. Okay. Let's see. I'm on the right camera. All right. That's better. All right.
That's better.
Yeah. Okay. So this is one of my pistols. I have a few. All right. This is an a P320 M18 6-hour. Once again, for YouTube, there is nothing, no bullet in the chamber, nothing in the mag well. The gun is clear. All right. Okay. All right. Now, here is my duty belt. I'm going to put the gun down. I'm going to put the gun in the duty belt. Here's my duty belt. I'm not a police officer, but I was in the military, so I'm familiar with these duty belts, and I wear them when I'm out at the range especially. Now, these are mag holders. This particular mag right here that I'm touching is for my AR-15. This thing back here is a first aid or trauma kit. Over here is a tourniquet. You might can't see it. That's a tourniquet. Right here is, Chloe, actually a holder for the knife that you all got me for Christmas.
Yep.
Thank you for that, you and Caleb. All right, so let me put this. Let me put this pistol in my holster. Did you hear that click?
Mm-hmm.
Let me do it again. Listen. You hear that?
Mm-hmm. We hear it.
Do you hear it well? I want you to hear it again, because that's
Let's
the
do it.
security system that I'm talking about. Watch this. Right there. She's locked. Now watch
Loud and
this.
clear.
Watch this.
Mm.
I'm pulling with all my might.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot get that pistol out of there unless I know how to get it out. You see my point?
Mm.
Now, here's another little system. Here's another little part that also kind of, this is not as secure as the other one, but that's another one. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But look at that. So Patrick could have been pulling on that officer's pistol and would have never been able to get it out.
Mm.
Never. Could not. Unless he accidentally touched the trigger part here that will release it. Now, I'm gonna touch the little trigger part. Now it comes out.
What do you mean the trigger part?
Well, there's a little release
Okay.
that will unlock it. That's what clicks when you, that's what right here, you're gonna hear it again. just heard it.
Mhm.
Now
Mhm.
I'm gonna press the release. You'll hear it click too.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
But what I want the rebels to see is I'm gonna move the mic for a second. I'm not putting on. I cannot pull that pistol out of there.
Mhm.
Hit my glasses. Okay. Let me really try. Okay. I can't get it out.
Mhm.
And the duty holster that officers use, it's another brand. Hold on. Now, sometimes it gets stuck in there and you can't get it out. So hopefully that demonstrates that the argument that Patrick could have gotten his pistol and shot that officer, is rather bogus.
That was so good to see in person. That demonstration of how difficult it would have been for Patrick to get that officer's firearm, and the fact that the officer was on Patrick's back and Patrick's arms, he would have had to reach behind his back or turn around to even try to get access to the belt. He was pinned down underneath the weight of the officer.
That's a whole nother point. And you're right, because if the officer was right-handed, and we can tell he was right-handed because he reached to his right side and got his firearm, and Patrick is down under him, so maybe some sort of way he could have got his hand back there, but he would not have been in a position to get that pistol out. And definitely knowing that that pistol was locked up the way it was. I know it was locked up because officers don't go out there with a duty holster that is not locked, okay? And so even when the officer grabbed the pistol, he unlocked it. You can't see that if you don't know that. If you're not familiar with these duty holsters, you don't know that, but he had to, if it's a Safari Land holster, like I think it probably is, then he had to release a couple things in order to get that pistol out. He did it quickly because he's familiar with it. He's on the range all the time, shooting it, practicing, and so forth. But it's a bogus argument to say that he could have gotten that officer's pistol and shot him like that, and shot him. And that's what they're going to say. They're going to say, yeah, he wasn't armed, but he could get the officer's gun.
Yeah.
Well, I just educated you all. I just educated you on why it is extremely difficult for a person to take a pistol out of a duty holster. It is very, very, very hard to do. Okay, for people who may have just joined us. Okay. I just clicked it in. That's the lock. It's locked now. I cannot get it out. And if I'm reaching behind me, in Patrick's case, if he's reaching behind him trying to get it out, it's virtually impossible. Even if he's right on top of the officer and can get a good grip on it and doesn't know what he's trying, doesn't know that it's locked up and or how to unlock it, no way. No way.
Yep. That was so good to see. And so that's the type of analysis that goes into this, Rebels.
That's right.
That's the type of analysis that we hope the district attorney does. This type of thorough analysis, use of force experts, law enforcement experts, de-escalation experts, etc. And I myself, I do hope that this officer is charged with something. We'll see. I see that Arlene Harrell. Thank you for all of your comments, Arlene. She said, I have about 5 or 6 cousins that are police officers. One of them quit the force after George Floyd's death.
Mm,
Wow.
mm, okay.
I've heard police officers doing that in the wake of his death and what happened. And then she said, as we speak, Patrick's brothers and others are protesting.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing to do. We need to be protesting. We need to fight this issue on many, many different levels, on different, we look back at the civil rights movement. You had Dr. King protesting. You had Thurgood Marshall in the court system. You had A.W. Phillips Randolph fighting in the labor movement. You had the young folks, the SNCC movement that were on the college campuses, et cetera. You had Malcolm X talking to the radicals. You had the black business owners who were, hitting this thing on a corporate level. So we got to do all of it. But do not overlook how important it is to do one simple thing, and that is to vote. To vote so that the right people can get in office and change the law. Because here's what happens. The law, the U.S., either Congress or the U.S. Supreme Court hands down the law. Then the police departments, about 18,000 different police departments in this country, they then will base their training manuals on what the court says or what Congress says. Okay? And then they train the officers. So, okay, like Tennessee v. Garner, you make sure before you pull the trigger that this person is armed, or that you can justify it as a split-second decision via Graham v. Connor, or that, it's all that. So they get training in when to use force like that based on the law, again, which becomes law because of the politics part of it, okay? Now, Chloe, I want to go back to something Sean Breezy said, because as an African-American man, I can relate to this very, very, very well. Mr. Breezy said, just purchased my first firearm. First of all, good for you on that. Good for you on that, Sean, because I'm a huge defender of the Second Amendment. I'm a country boy, Sean. I'm from the country. I grew up around guns. I'm also ex-military. So, with my kids, Chloe and Caleb, I said to them growing up, respect firearms, don't fear them. Respect them, don't fear them. Okay, and I would have them hold them. And as they grew up and so forth, a family outing for us was to go to the range. We actually took the license to carry class together, me, my son, and daughter. So we defend and there was a time where African Americans could not own firearms despite the Second Amendment. Okay? So we need to be firearm owners, but we need to be armed and informed. Armed and informed. And I got another YouTube channel. Chloe and I started another YouTube channel. It's entitled Armed and Informed. And you should go and join it, because we're going to be putting up, it's new, and we're struggling to find the time to put up videos and so forth. But there, we got a few videos and more coming. But go over and subscribe, because we're going to be talking about firearms as it relates to the African American community. Particularly.
We also started a course too that I think we're going to be putting out pretty soon.
Yes.
We've been developing this course for a couple years now.
And also, I'd like to recommend an organization called the National African American Gun Association. It's the largest It's the largest African American gun association in the country. Has branches all over the country, and we met the owner, not the owner, but we met the president, the chairman, the founder of the organization, Philip Smith, a wonderful guy, a great guy, just an awesome leader. And he has grown this organization from a handful of folks to, I think they're 30, 40, 50,000 African-American members now. And we are happy members. In fact, I'm about to become a lifetime member. Chloe, I don't know if you want to do that, but I know you're a member now. I'm going to
I
become
will.
you're going to
Yeah.
become a lifetime member too? Yes.
Hmm.
I love this organization. Um, so Sean, get informed about the laws in your particular jurisdiction so you don't run afoul. Black folks are more apt to be charged with firearm violations, even law abiding. We've represented many. We just represented a young man several weeks ago who was charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. We got that charge dismissed. He should have never been charged with it in the first place. But when you're black, you are more apt to be charged with these serious felonies with your firearm than other folks. But if you educate yourself, you can try to avoid some of that on where you can take your firearm, self-defense, when you can use it, all of that. Here's what I'm leading up to. The very thing that you said here. Your wife's concern about you carrying your firearm because of the police. That is a real and legitimate concern. It's a concern that my wife has. It's a concern that I have. Okay? Absolutely. Definitely. Although when police officers get shot, it's mainly white men who are shooting them. Okay? You look at the studies. It's mainly white guys who are shooting the police officers, not black guys. Okay? Occasionally we in fact had here in Dallas a black man to kill 5 police officers, which was very, very, very unfortunate, wrong. We condemn that. That's not the way to fight this battle. Okay? That's not the way to fight this battle. But when you look at it, not just anecdotally, but you look at the research, it's white men who kill police. So their fear of us is really not grounded in facts.
Hmm.
But it's a reality. And they do fear us. They do have animus against us. And by the way, Sean, we were talking about that before the show today. We were talking about the fact that according to Professor Paul Butler of Georgetown University, an African-American law professor, he wrote an excellent book called Chokehold, where he used the Eric Garner killing to write a book entitled Chokehold. And Professor Butler revealed some things in his book that totally surprised me. And that is, most of the police officers who kill black men, according to Professor Butler, are black police officers. That's what he says. Buy the book, and you'll see it there. That's what he says. That's what he says the research shows. You know, the cases that get the most attention are when the white officers do it. But according to him, if you look at the studies, black police officers are more apt to kill other black men. It's not that surprising because, you know, black male on black male shooting homicides are pretty high in the community. So anyway, so this concern about being shot as a black man with a firearm carrying it. Let me say this. I don't leave the house without my firearm. Okay? I don't leave the house. When I walk out the house, you better believe I'm armed. Okay? I know this thing about police officers is real. I've not been stopped with my firearm, but if I am, I'll just deal with it. And I'll deal with it very responsibly. Now, where I'm from originally, I don't mean to take the whole show here, Chloe. I just want to address this. Where I'm from, where I'm from originally, which is North Carolina, we have open carry laws there as far back as I can remember. So you can openly carry your firearm, and you can do the same thing here in Texas now that they changed the law. But we were doing that way back. I used to carry my firearm on my side, just in the open. And when the police would stop me, I would just tell them I have a firearm in the vehicle. And I remember the last time that happened, the officer told me, that's fine. Just put it right here on the dashboard and just don't reach for it. Ain't no biggie, no big problem. Um, so it's a serious consideration, Sean, but I don't believe it's one that, you know, that justifies not carrying it. But do what you think. Do what you and your wife think. Don't listen to me and get out there and take it and God knows something happened. I mean, do what you and her think are the right thing for you all to do. But that fear is not one that causes me not to carry. It's running into some of these crazy folks who don't carry the badge that to me um, is that's the reason I carry. You know, some of these folks like the ones who murdered Ahmaud Arbery. Okay, I want to be able to try to equal things up a little bit if somebody want to do something like that. I'm a committed Christian, so my faith is number one, and I'm covered by the blood of Jesus first and foremost. But yes, I do carry when I leave the house. So I understand that concern, and it's a legitimate concern that you and your wife have. But for me, I weigh it against the risk of not having it, and I just prefer having it. Sorry for all that long talk there, Chloe.
No, this is so important, and it's something that we're passionate about as defense attorneys because we represent black men who have acted in self defense, who have gotten their firearms to defend themselves or someone else, and they were charged. So it's so important, and I encourage everyone to go check out our Armed and Informed, our second YouTube channel. Like I said before, we've also developed a course that I hope that we can put out to educate people on Texas and federal gun laws and to have the knowledge if you decide to purchase a firearm, especially black people, what laws apply and what you can and should do with it. So I want to say one thing because Arlene mentioned that Patrick and his brothers and his families are protesting now. I mean, just seeing Patrick's parents and hearing how they came over from Congo as refugees to escape war, to escape violence, and then to have their sons killed by law enforcement, by
Yes,
a government official here in a country that they were fleeing violence from. It's just so sad on another level as well.
yes,
Patrick's mom, Dorcas Lyoya, when they had the press conference, she said that they left their home in the Democratic Republic of the Congo to escape war and thought her son would be safe here, but she's heartbroken. She said, as a parent, I was thinking maybe it was my son who was going to bury me. He will assist at my funeral. But what is so astonishing, I am the one burying my son. And then Patrick's dad, Peter Loyola, he compared his son's death to crimes seen in other countries. He said, quote, I didn't believe that in this country, that there was a genocide in this country. I didn't know. And Peter
wow,
and Dorcas, they said that through a translator.
wow,
So it's just heartbreaking on another level to know that they escaped war and violence in their home country, came here, to the promise of the American dream, and then lost their son to violence here in the U.S. as well. So it's so tragic.
Well, we got a couple other topics that we're going to briefly talk about, but I do want to. There's one comment here by uh, Arlene Harrell that deserves. Ms. Harrell says, yes, everybody vote, please. A closed mouth doesn't get fed. Yes, thank you for that. That is absolutely right. So get out and vote. If you got some local elections going on, vote in those. Don't just wait for the national elections. And whatever you do, get out in November. And I mean, just imagine. This is not a political show. This is, a law firm. But just imagine if some of the other folks take over Congress right now. Just imagine how different life could be with some of the policies that we're seeing, where they are outlawing critical race theory, where they are, not wanting to fund, vaccines for the pandemic, where they are very, very cozied up with Vladimir Putin. Just they hate qualified immunity. I mean, they love qualified immunity and they hate police reform and so forth. We just don't need to go back to 4 more years of that. Is all I'm saying.
I agree.
Okay, Chloe. So we want to turn our attention. I think you want to make a few comments about the Amazon situation. Talk to us about that. I'm not very familiar with that. School us, educate us.
Yes, 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 yes. I have been following this story for quite a while. So Amazon um, was the first union for Amazon was started just a couple days ago. Some Amazon workers held a vote. Thousands of people voted, and they decided to start the first Amazon union. And the president of the Amazon labor union, his name is Chris Smalls. My dad just put a picture up of him with his close friend Derek Palmer. They started the Amazon labor union. Chris Smalls started this union when he was fired from Amazon back in 2020 after he led a protest over working conditions at an Amazon warehouse. And after he was fired, he rallied up and he led a grassroots movement, getting together, thousands of Amazon workers up there in New York, specifically Staten Island, to protest the working conditions of Amazon warehouses, the lack of breaks that they received, um, being overworked, bad start times, just not being taken seriously as employers. And over the course of these past 2 years, he has, been on the news, he's been on the ground, he's just led this huge swell of grassroots support.
Good for
And
him.
look, yes, he's a regular black guy.
Good for him.
And he was underestimated by Amazon. They tried to smear him. I read emails where they tried to paint him as being ignorant and unintelligent. That was the strategy that Amazon tried to paint Chris Smalls and his friend Derek Palmer.
Which
But they
one is which?
persevered.
Chloe, I have both of their
Chris,
pictures up.
yes, Chris Smalls, he's the one in the New York cap.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
He's the president. And so they made history April 1st. They went head to head in the union vote and they won. And this was the first successful United States organizing effort in Amazon's history. And this is just the beginning. Chris said, and he's done multiple interviews on NPR, Fox News with Tucker Carlson, all over the political spectrum. He said, this is just the beginning. He has been reached out by hundreds of thousands of people, Amazon workers across the country who want to start unions in their own local branches and warehouses. And he said that he is going to continue this movement.
Yeah. Now
He said the following.
you mentioned Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson. But even Tucker Carlson said that he was rooting for Chris Smalls.
Yeah. this issue kind of has united the left and the right. Because I mean, look, both people who wants to be working in bad working conditions, not having time for breaks, all of that. So I'm just
Especially where the owner is worth $200 billion and you working in
yeah,
those types of conditions. That's outrageous. That's capitalism to the extreme.
yep, yep. So this is just huge. It's just a story I've been following. I may make a separate video breaking down kind of the labor movement here in the United States, the various laws that dominate labor unions. But this is just good for working people to make sure that people have good working conditions. And I just love it. And coming from a regular black dude leading this union, I mean, it's just been great to see. So watch out for this story, guys. I may make a video and put it on this channel as well.
Thank you for that. So we're coming to the end of today's broadcast. I do want to, before we go on, just shout out one of my heroes. Let me see if I have a picture set here. One of my heroes, Jackie Robinson, who integrated Major League Baseball. Mr. Robinson, it's just up there in my mind. Baseball was the very first sport that I actually played growing up officially. I played Little League Baseball. I remember to this day. I was only maybe 11, 12 years old. I played for the Orioles and just grew up loving the sport. Love it to this day. My wife and I catch a baseball game, especially before the pandemic. Just a great way to go out and spend some couple of hours, eating some hot dogs and so on, enjoying a game of baseball. Well, all of that is possible for us Black Americans because of what Jackie Robinson did. Being called the N-word and everything else you could imagine when he, integrated one of America's favorite pastimes. Yesterday was the anniversary of that moment, and I wanted to shout him out. So, listen, you all, thank you very, very much for staying with us today as we talked about this unfortunate incident out in Grand Rapids, Michigan, with the loss of life. Once again, our prayers are with his family. And Chloe, in my opinion, this was not a justified shooting. Despite the Graham v. Connor case, despite qualified immunity, this was not a justified shooting. There's no way a person who is accused of having the wrong license tag on his vehicle should end up dead. That's like a person that's like a parent killing their child for spilling some water on the floor. It's just outrageous. It's outrageous, okay? And we're tired of seeing it. And it primarily happens to us African Americans, specifically Black men. And Chloe and I are doing our part to combat it. We're representing folks who've suffered the same thing. And by the way, it's not just Black, Hispanic males as well. Hispanic men too. The incidents are highest with Black men, but men of color, period. So thank you for tuning in. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Did I get that right, Chloe?
You did. Like, share, subscribe.
Like, share, and
subscribe. It's been a pleasure.
It's been great. Thank you all for spending this time with us. Until next week, God bless you. Have a very, very happy Easter tomorrow, celebrating the resurrection of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Bye-bye.